They called it a prank. But even at 12, Ella Reese knew better. The moment Chase Langston said, "Let's test how tough you really are," the smirks around the pool turned mean. A second later, two boys in board shorts grabbed her arms. She barely had time to scream before she was yanked across the manicured lawn, sandals scraping the stone path, heart jackhammering in her chest. Blitz's enclosure loomed ahead, rusted steel fencing set apart from the rest of the estate, shaded by maples and just far enough from the main house to drown out any cries. The shepherd inside had a reputation whispered between staff and shouted across parties. Vicious, unpredictable, ruined. Ella had only seen him from a distance, pacing like a soldier cut loose from a war that never ended. Chase fished a key from his pocket. "Let's see if the dog can sniff out class." "No, please don't," Ella begged, trying to dig her heels into the dirt. But Chase already had the gate open. One swift motion, and she was shoved inside like trash. The door slammed, the lock clicked. She stumbled and hit the ground hard, palms burning from gravel. Her breath caught as Blitz turned. He didn't charge, didn't snarl, he just stared. The kids on the outside had gone quiet. Even the phone Chase held out to film, always filming, lowered a few inches. Blitz took one step forward. Ella stayed frozen. The sun beat down on her neck, sweat mixing with fear. She couldn't tell if she was shaking or if the earth had tilted under her. Another step. The dog's head tilted slightly. His ears were pricked forward, not pinned. His mouth stayed shut, chest rising slow, deliberate. Behind the fence, someone whispered, "Dude, he's not attacking." Ella blinked hard, willing herself not to cry. She knew dogs, had loved them all her life, though she'd never had one of her own. And something in Blitz's posture didn't feel like threat. It felt like recognition. She held out a trembling hand. "It's okay," she whispered, barely louder than breath. "I'm not gonna hurt you." Blitz didn't flinch. He closed the distance, lowered his head, and sniffed. That was all. One slow inhale, then he sat down, perfectly calm. Ella nearly collapsed from relief. The others didn't move. A moment passed, then another, before Harper Langston Chase's younger sister snapped out of her daze and bolted for the house. That's when Gregory Langston's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. "What the hell is going on here?" Ella didn't dare turn. Blitz hadn't moved, still seated beside her, like a soldier on guard. Gregory's dress shoes slammed against the stone. "Get away from the fence!" Chase stammered something, but the words fell apart as his father stormed past. Behind him, Rosa Reese Ella's mother appeared, her apron stained from the morning's prep shift, eyes wide with horror. Harper trailed behind, guilt blooming in her pale cheeks. "Don't open that gate," Gregory barked, raising a hand to block Rosa. "That animal is dangerous." "Sir, please," Rosa started, her voice breaking. "That's my daughter." Gregory didn't take his eyes off the scene. Ella in the dirt. Blitz, motionless beside her. A picture that defied every report, every vet bill, every warning. "Mr. Langston," came a slower voice from the back. Whitlow, the estate's groundskeeper, stepped out from behind the hedges, wiping his weathered hands on a rag. "Maybe we should—" Gregory cut him off. "She trespassed into a secured area. This dog is scheduled for removal next week. The fact that it hasn't mauled her yet doesn't mean anything." Ella finally found her voice. "He's not dangerous." Gregory raised an eyebrow, cold and unamused. "You a trainer now?" "No, sir," she said, rising slowly to her feet. Blitz didn't move, didn't growl, just followed her with those intense amber eyes. "But I think he's scared, not mean, scared." Rosa's hands trembled against her mouth. Whitlow took a step closer to the fence. Gregory exhaled. "This is ridiculous." He turned to Rosa. "Your daughter broke a house rule. She entered a dangerous zone, risked her life, and put this estate at legal risk." Rosa opened her mouth, but nothing came. "I should fire you both on the spot," Gregory continued, his tone clipped and surgical. "But I'm willing to offer one chance." He faced Ella again. 3 days. You have 3 days to show me this dog can be controlled. No aggression, no incidents." He glanced down at Blitz. "Any sign of threat, he's gone, and so are you." Ella looked at her mother. The fear in Rosa's eyes wasn't just for Blitz, it was for everything. Their job, their home, their future. "I understand," Ella said quietly. Gregory nodded once, then turned sharply on his heel. "Whitlow, get the girl out, and have someone sanitize this mess." Ella didn't remember walking out of the enclosure. She only remembered the warmth of Blitz's fur against her palm when she brushed his back. A silent promise neither of them could explain. That night, the estate was unusually quiet. Even the fountains outside the guest house seemed subdued. Rosa moved through the kitchen in silence, avoiding Ella's eyes. Harper left a folded note under Ella's bedroom door, but never knocked. Alone in her room, Ella sat at the window, staring out at the enclosure beyond the garden hedge. Blitz was pacing again, slow and methodical. She opened the old laptop she used for homework, one of Harper's discarded hand-me-downs, and typed, "How to train a German Shepherd from scratch." The screen filled with links. She clicked, started reading, and didn't stop until the sun cracked the edge of the hills. Down by the enclosure, Blitz paused and looked up at her window. Ella didn't wave. She just whispered, "We've got 3 days." The morning broke with a stillness too heavy to ignore. A fog clung to the treetops above Langston Estate, softening the sun into a dull orb that hovered low behind a line of hedges. From her window, Ella Reese could see Blitz pacing inside his enclosure, just as he had been when she fell asleep. He hadn't barked, hadn't whimpered, just moved like a ghost locked in his own pattern. Downstairs, the air inside the staff kitchen was brittle. Her mother, Rosa, stood by the sink in her pressed uniform, eyes fixed on the silver faucet as if it might offer a solution she hadn't already tried. The breakfast orders from the Langstons would come in soon, and Gregory had made it clear any misstep over the next 72 hours, no matter how small, would end their employment. No severance, no recommendations, just silence and a gate that wouldn't open again. Ella chewed dry toast in the corner, her worn notebook open beside her. She'd spent half the night scribbling down everything she'd read, positive reinforcement, body language indicators, canine trauma signs. She didn't know what would work yet, but she knew one thing. Blitz wasn't going to respond to fear. By the time she crossed the lawn to his enclosure, the morning mist had lifted, revealing the full sprawl of the estate's manicured perfection stone fountains, sculpted hedges, iron sculptures that seemed to glare down their noses at anyone in borrowed sneakers. Blitz stood near the center of his pen, tail low, head lifted as she approached. His ears pricked forward, not hostile, but watchful, like a soldier waiting on orders that never came. Ella stopped a few feet from the fence. She didn't speak, just sat down cross-legged in the grass, her back straight, her eyes level with his. In her lap was a Ziploc bag with bits of grilled chicken she'd saved from the Langstons' leftover platter the night before. The smell carried across the breeze. Blitz sniffed once, then sat. She set a piece near the fence line but didn't toss it in. No commands, no pleading, just the offer. Blitz didn't move. For 5 long minutes, they just watched each other. And then he took a step forward, then another, until his nose pressed against the chain link just inches from her outstretched palm. He didn't touch the food, he didn't need to. His eyes said everything. She whispered, "We start slow." Midday brought more than heat. It brought eyes watchful ones. Chase, keeping his distance behind the hedge near the pool house. Harper, watching from her bedroom window. And Mr. Whitlow quietly trimming hedges 20 feet away, but never more than an arm's reach from the shed he kept locked tight. The older man had been part of the estate longer than any of the marble statues or ivy walls. He didn't speak much, but he noticed everything. When Ella glanced over at him, he gave the faintest nod, then turned back to his clippers. By early afternoon, she had coaxed Blitz through 3 basic commands using nothing but food and tone: sit, stay, come. The response wasn't perfect, but it wasn't defiance either. He watched her every movement like it meant something, like her voice mattered more than the command itself. After dinner prep, Ella returned to the enclosure to find Mr. Whitlow waiting, a worn canvas satchel slung over his shoulder. "You've got good timing," he said without preamble. He knelt near the fence and pulled from the bag a thick leather collar, faded but still sturdy, with brass fittings dulled by age. On the inside, a patch of fabric bore the faint imprint of letters: K9, Rex, 143rd. "This belonged to my partner," he said, not looking at her. "Back when I was stationed in Kandahar, Rex wasn't just a dog, he was the kind that knew things before we did. Knew when a door was booby-trapped, when a man was lying, when to freeze before a sniper's round cracked open the air." Ella swallowed. The way he spoke, it wasn't just memory, it was reverence. "I've been watching your dog," he said. "He doesn't move like a house pet, doesn't react like a civilian shepherd either. Too focused, too trained. You see the way he circles before he lays down? That's tactical, habit from deployment." He handed the collar to her. It was heavier than she expected and warm from the sun. "Try it," he said. "Might remind him what he used to be." Blitz sniffed it when she held it through the fence, then nudged it once with his nose before backing up. No aggression, just something that felt like understanding. Ella tucked the collar into her backpack. She'd try it when the time was right. That night, back in the staff cottage, Rosa hovered at the kitchen table, folding linens with too much precision. The silence between mother and daughter stretched long and thin. When Ella finally spoke, it was just above a whisper. "He's not broken, Mom, just hurt." Rosa didn't look up. "That's what scares me. Hurt dogs bite the hardest." But Ella wasn't listening. Her mind had already returned to the pen, to the way Blitz had leaned his weight forward but not through the fence, to the way his ears had shifted at the sound of her voice. He wasn't just a dog reacting to cues. He was deciding. Every movement, every pause, it was a choice. And he was starting to choose her. As the second day broke over Wood Hollow, Ella woke before the alarms. She dressed quietly, tying her boots with hands that trembled not from fear, but from focus. She had plans, she had notes, and she had one shot left. Outside, the air smelled of grass and something else: expectation. Blitz was already waiting. She didn't need to call. He stood the moment he saw her, tail still but not low, guarded, yet present. She unzipped her bag, pulled out the collar and held it up. The name on the inside was not his, but the weight of it meant something. Blitz sniffed it again, then, without prompt, lowered his head. Ella looped it over his neck with careful hands, tightening it until it fit snug but loose enough to respect his space. Blitz didn't flinch. The sun crested over the trees as she took a step back. "Let's see who you were," she said softly, and Blitz stood tall. That afternoon, she would teach him a new word: Tomorrow, she would defend him against everything she couldn't control. But for now, they trained, because 3 days wasn't time to fix everything. But it was just enough to start believing again. By the third morning, the air over Langston Estate had changed. It wasn't the weather, it was the way people moved. Slower, warier, as if everyone felt a current pulsing beneath the trimmed hedges and white stone paths. Gregory Langston hadn't spoken to Rosa since issuing his warning, and Rosa, in turn, had barely spoken to Ella except to remind her to stay away from trouble. But it was too late for that. Trouble had already found her in the form of a dog with war in his eyes and a mind too sharp to forget it. Blitz was no longer pacing in his enclosure. He waited at the gate now, still and quiet, eyes tracking her steps from the moment she emerged from the cottage. He stood with the posture of a soldier at attention, but without fear or agitation. Every movement Ella made, he mirrored walk forward, stop, turn. There were no wasted steps, no delay, and not once did he bark. That morning, she introduced him to scent detection. Using the old training logs Mr. Whitlow had passed down dog-eared, faded pages with cryptic shorthand, Ella studied how military dogs were trained to identify trace materials, explosives, even living bodies in disaster zones. She didn't have access to any of those exact resources, of course, but Whitlow had handed her a pouch weathered and stained that held scraps of fabric from his own deployment. It carried traces of oil, gunpowder, metal, ghosts of missions no one talked about anymore. She hid the pouch beneath the brush at the far end of the enclosure, half covered by leaves and the scent of damp earth. Blitz watched her work but never tried to interfere. When she gave the cue, just a quiet, deliberate search, his body shifted. Not like a pet eager for fetch, but like a machine with its switch flipped. His ears angled forward, his head dipped low, and he moved with tight, deliberate zigzags across the ground, cutting through scent patterns like a blade. He reached the spot in under 30 seconds and tapped the buried pouch with one paw. Ella didn't cheer, didn't praise, she just nodded. Blitz didn't need treats. What he needed was purpose. By midday, Harper had appeared again, hovering near the garden fence in a loose hoodie and sandals, arms crossed, phone tucked in her pocket, but no longer recording. She didn't say much, just leaned silently against a post while Blitz ran perimeter drills inside the enclosure. He would circle the fence, pause at each corner, then return to Ella, eyes alert for instruction. Harper didn't hide the amazement on her face. Neither did she offer help. But she stayed. In the early afternoon, Ella attempted something riskier. She entered the enclosure, not with chicken or treats, not with caution tape or hesitation. Just herself, a leash and a steady hand. Blitz stood in the middle of the pen, head tilted, watching as she stepped through the gate and closed it behind her. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then Blitz walked toward her, calm, confident, ears neutral. She held her breath, but not from fear. He stopped inches from her, looked down at the leash in her hand, and sat. Ella clipped it to his collar. They walked the perimeter together for the first time. Mr. Whitlow saw them from a distance, his rake frozen midair, the lines in his face softening as he watched. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. That evening, as the sky turned the color of copper and smoke, Ella returned to the cottage with her boots muddy and her sleeves damp from the hours in the field. She didn't eat much. Couldn't. Her mind replayed every moment from the day, every command Blitz had followed, every new behavior he had displayed, every time he seemed to predict her next step before she gave it. It wasn't obedience. It was something older, something deeper. That night, just before bed, she opened Whitlow's notebook again and reread the same line 3 times. A true working dog doesn't wait for orders. He anticipates the need. She glanced out the window. Blitz was lying near the gate of his enclosure, head resting on his front paws, eyes glowing softly in the moonlight like twin beacons. The next morning, Whitlow met her by the garden wall, holding a photograph. It was creased and weather-stained, the corners soft from time. In the photo, a much younger version of the old man knelt beside a German shepherd, both of them in dusty fatigues, a line of tents and camouflage netting behind them. "That's Rex," he said, voice roughened by age but steady. "I carried him through more than any man in my unit. He didn't just follow orders, he read the ground, the wind, the sweat off your back." Ella studied the image, then looked up. "He saved lives, didn't he?" Whitlow gave a nod that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than memory, too many to count. He folded the photo carefully and returned it to his coat. "That dog in the pen, he's not a mutt gone wrong. He's one of us. Somewhere down the line, someone trained him for something bigger than guarding lawn ornaments." Ella didn't reply. She didn't need to. They both knew it. She spent the afternoon expanding the training, added hand signals, reinforced scent games, worked on impulse control tossing distractions into the pen, running past him with fake panic, even having Harper toss a tennis ball from across the fence while shouting random commands. Blitz never flinched. He waited for Ella. Responded only to Ella. That evening, she sat with him in the enclosure as the sun dipped behind the tree line. The leather collar gleamed faintly under the last of the daylight. She leaned back against the fence, exhausted but wired, heart pounding with the weight of everything they'd accomplished and everything still to prove. She didn't notice Harper approaching until the girl dropped something through the fence, a thin paperback book with the words "Understanding the German Shepherd Mind" on the cover. "For tomorrow," Harper said, her voice quieter than usual. "Figured you'd want all the help you can get." Ella turned the book over in her hands, then looked up, but Harper was already walking away. That night, as wind stirred the curtains in her bedroom and Blitz paced once before settling in the grass outside, Ella stayed awake studying the book by flashlight. Every paragraph confirmed what she already suspected. This wasn't a dog to be taught with tricks or noise. This was a dog who needed to be seen. She closed the book and stared out into the dark. Tomorrow would be the last day. And she wasn't afraid anymore, because Blitz wasn't learning to follow her. He was remembering how to trust. By dawn, the clouds had thickened. Not enough to promise rain, but just enough to make the sky feel heavy, expectant, as if the estate itself was waiting for something to break. Ella Reese sat cross-legged outside Blitz's enclosure, a lump of uneaten toast growing cold in her lap. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Every hour ticked closer to the moment she had both prepared for and feared, the official evaluation, and not just from anyone. Gregory Langston had called in a specialist, someone with real authority. Someone who could make Blitz vanish with a single signature. Dr. Leonard Harmon arrived shortly before 9, in a government-plated sedan that glided silently through the wrought-iron gates. Tall, broad-shouldered, a face carved from cold stone and experience. He walked with the kind of posture that couldn't be taught rigid from years of command. When Gregory met him at the steps of the main house, they exchanged no pleasantries. Just a quick nod, a hushed conversation, and then both men turned toward the training field. Ella watched them approach. Blitz did too. She could feel the tension humming under the shepherd's skin as she clipped the leash to his collar. He didn't resist, but he didn't lean into her touch the way he had the day before. His body was alert to alert. Dr. Harmon offered no introduction. He barely looked at her. "Put him through a basic sequence," he said, voice gravelly and flat. Ella gave the first command. "Sit." Blitz sat. "Stay." Blitz froze. "Come." Blitz moved, then stopped, Mid-step, he hesitated, ears flicking to the side. Ella frowned. "Blitz, come." This time, he turned his head toward the trees beyond the enclosure. His eyes narrowed, his posture stiffened. "Blitz," she said again, more firmly. "Heel." Nothing. A beat passed, then another. Dr. Harmon made a note in a small black notebook. Ella's pulse quickened. This wasn't like him. He hadn't disobeyed like this in days. Something had broken the rhythm. She turned, scanning the field, and caught it. Chase, standing behind a tool shed near the back fence holding something small, silver. A whistle. Not Whitlow's military issue. This one gleamed, new and sharp. He blew again, barely perceptible, but Blitz's ears flicked in the same direction. "Stop it," Ella hissed under her breath. But Dr. Harmon was watching her now, and so was Gregory, and there was no way to explain what she couldn't prove. "Command again," Harmon said. Ella knelt beside Blitz. "Ignore him," she whispered. "Eyes on me. You know me." Blitz blinked. She repeated the hand signal, then, slowly, deliberately, whistled the short, long tone Whitlow had taught her. Blitz snapped back into focus. In a single breath, he moved into formation. Sat. Rose. Heeled beside her with the grace and silence of a dancer made from steel. The shift was so sudden it made Harmon's brow twitch. They moved through drills. Basic, intermediate, advanced. Blitz executed them all, but something was different now. He wasn't fluid, he was rigid. Controlled, yes, but too tightly wound, like a wire stretched too far. When Ella cued down, he complied, but his tail didn't relax. When she tossed a distraction, his reaction came a beat too fast, more reflex than discipline. Harmon took the leash. He didn't ask. "Let's test him under pressure." Ella's stomach turned. She didn't stop him. She couldn't. The doctor stepped 5 paces away, then blew a command sharp, in German. Blitz stiffened, responded. Another command. Blitz advanced in a clean zigzag pattern. Then Harmon dropped a metal baton with a sharp clang against the concrete. Blitz stopped. Not froze. Not obeyed. He crouched. Muscles coiled, tail rigid, ears flattened back. Not aggressive, but on edge. Then, for the first time in front of anyone, Blitz growled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't a snarl, but it sliced through the field like broken glass. Ella felt her heart plummet. Harmon said nothing. He didn't react. He waited, then spoke again. A third command, low, clipped, calm. Blitz didn't move. Ella stepped forward, every nerve alive. "Blitz," she said, slowly, firmly. "Down." A second of hesitation, then Blitz obeyed. Chest to ground, head lowered, still. But the damage had been done. Harmon turned toward Gregory. "He's been mishandled. Conflicted protocols, distracted handlers, overstimulated. He's not dangerous, but he's unstable. At least right now." Gregory folded his arms. "So he's a liability." "He's a soldier," Harmon replied. "A confused one. That's not the same thing. But your call." Before either man could say more, a scream rang out from the main house. It wasn't Harper, it wasn't Rosa, it was Samantha. Blitz was on his feet before anyone else moved. He bolted, leash trailing behind, sprinting across the field toward the back patio. No hesitation, no cue, just motion. Ella chased after him. So did Gregory and Harmon. The others followed. Inside the sunroom, Samantha Langston lay seizing on the marble floor, her limbs jerking violently, eyes rolled back. Victoria knelt beside her, sobbing. A housekeeper fumbled with the phone, hands shaking too hard to dial. Blitz stopped 3 feet from the girl. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He sat, silent, focused, watching, breathing in her distress like it was coded information only he understood. Victoria turned, wild-eyed. "Get him out of here." "No," Harmon said. Everyone froze. The man who had spoken few words all morning now knelt beside Blitz and whispered something Ella didn't catch. Blitz didn't move, didn't blink. "He's responding to seizure activity," Harmon said slowly, rising again. He knew this was coming. Victoria stared at the dog, then at her daughter, whose spasms had begun to slow. Blitz shifted forward slightly, just an inch, and Samantha's hand reached out, weakly, barely controlled, but deliberate. Her fingers brushed his fur, and Blitz licked them once. When the paramedics arrived, there was nothing to explain. Just a dog who had known before anyone else. That night, no one spoke to Ella at dinner. No one scolded her. No one congratulated her. But when she passed Gregory Langston in the hallway, he didn't look through her. He looked at her and didn't say no. Outside, Blitz slept soundly by the gate. And for the first time in days, so did she. The morning after the test, sunlight cut across Langston Estate like a verdict. Clean, clear, no room for interpretation. Everything looked unchanged: the marble drive, the trimmed rose bushes, the flawless symmetry of privilege. But something beneath it had cracked, and the fault line ran straight through the heart of the household. Inside the kitchen cottage, Rosa moved in silence. Her hands worked on instinct, slicing fruit, folding linen, organizing the same silver trays she'd arranged for 6 months. But her eyes kept drifting to the window, to the back lawn where her daughter stood beside a shepherd who, until yesterday, had been one phone call from disappearance. Or worse. Blitz didn't pace anymore. He stood, still and proud, eyes tracking movement in the house, ears flicking only when a door closed too hard or a car engine roared to life. He didn't need to be tethered now. Wherever Ella moved, he followed, not behind, not ahead, beside. Gregory Langston hadn't made any announcements. No decision, no meeting. But Ella knew it was coming. The longer the silence dragged, the louder the uncertainty grew. Dr. Harmon had stayed the night, sleeping in one of the estate's guest suites. Before sunrise, he had been out again, quietly observing Blitz's behavior from a distance, like a man reevaluating a blueprint he once thought he understood. Ella had spent the early morning combing through Whitlow's logs again, searching for anything, dates, references, handler IDs that might connect Blitz to a real program. She found none, and maybe it didn't matter anymore. The truth had already spoken, and it had come through muscle memory, instinct, and the way Blitz had stood his ground in a room full of fear and not lost control. By mid-morning, Whitlow arrived at the edge of the enclosure with a small box. No speech, no preamble. He handed it to Ella and left. Inside was a medal, old and weathered, the ribbon faded to a dusty gray. On its back was a single engraved line: "Service beyond self." It wasn't official anymore. Maybe never had been in the strictest sense, but it felt like it mattered. Blitz sniffed it, then touched it gently with his nose. Ella pinned it to his collar. Around noon, Harper slipped out from the main house carrying a folded note. No envelope. Just handwriting, precise, measured, unmistakably Gregory's. She handed it to Ella without a word. It wasn't long. It simply said, "One condition." Beneath that, a second line: "Training program, supervised, enclosure stays, weekly evaluation." Ella stared at it for a long time. She expected to feel relief. She didn't. She felt like she'd been handed a key, but asked to earn every step of using it. That afternoon, the estate buzzed with subtle rearrangement. The enclosure was reinforced. A new shade structure was installed. Supplies appeared near the tool shed: a training kit, a first aid set, laminated cue cards, and a folder marked Langston Working Dog Record. No one said who ordered it. Whitlow, however, walked by and gave a near-invisible nod of approval. Late in the day, while Rosa prepped dinner and Harper sat cross-legged reading near the garden wall, Samantha emerged from the house for the first time since her episode. She walked slowly, flanked by her mother, her steps still unsteady but determined. Blitz stood the moment he saw her. He didn't rush. He simply waited. Samantha reached the edge of the fence and sat down cross-legged on the grass. Victoria hesitated only briefly before settling beside her. The moment was quiet, fragile. Blitz approached, one careful step at a time, lowered his head, and rested it on Samantha's knee. Victoria said nothing, but her hand slowly reached out, brushing the dog's shoulder once before retreating. No cameras, no witnesses, just understanding. That evening, after the dishes had been done and the sun dipped low behind the sycamores, Ella sat outside with Blitz resting beside her. His breath was slow and deep. For the first time in days, she let herself relax fully, spine against the trunk of an old tree, legs stretched out in the grass. In her hands was Whitlow's final note, a passage scrawled in pencil on a torn corner of notebook paper. Some dogs follow orders. Others follow something deeper. You found the second kind. That matters more than medals. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. As stars began to burn overhead, the estate was quiet again. But it wasn't the same silence that had held its breath days before. It was softer now, earned. Inside the Langston mansion, Gregory sat at his desk, rewatching the footage Harper had sent of Blitz beside Samantha, of the test, of Ella stepping between fear and instinct without flinching. He didn't say a word, but he pressed play again. Outside, Blitz lifted his head toward the window, and in that simple, quiet moment, honor found its place, no longer behind steel fences or whispered warnings, but beside a girl who had never stopped believing that even the most wounded could be made whole again.